Matthew had always believed in fairy tales. He'd grown up hearing about love that lasted forever, about finding the one person who could make life feel complete. He found that in Olivia. She was everything he could have ever dreamed of: beautiful, intelligent, full of energy, and an incredible partner. They met in college, and it didn't take long for Matthew to realize she was the one. The connection was instant, and their love story bloomed in the most magical of ways. Their relationship was a whirlwind. They spent endless nights talking about their dreams, their future, and what they wanted out of life. Olivia made him feel invincible, like he could conquer anything with her by his side. As the years went by, their bond only grew stronger. They moved in together, built a life, and soon, their love story was the envy of everyone around them. But as time passed, things began to change in ways that Matthew couldn't understand. Olivia, once so full of life and energy, became distant. At first, Matthew thought it was just stress from work. She started coming home later, saying she was caught up with important meetings and projects. He didn't think much of it. She was ambitious, and he admired that about her. But then, it became more than just work. She started pulling away emotionally. Their conversations grew shorter, and the spark they once had seemed to flicker out. Matthew couldn't put his finger on it, but he felt like there was something wrong. He tried talking to her, but Olivia always brushed him off with excuses. "I'm just tired," she would say. "Work is demanding right now, I just need some time to focus." Matthew believed her, but a seed of doubt began to grow in the back of his mind. Then came the night that would change everything. Matthew had just returned from a business trip and arrived home to an empty house. Olivia hadn't called to say she would be late, which wasn't like her. He assumed she was out with friends or finishing up work. But as the hours passed and she still didn't come home, a sense of unease crept over him. He tried calling, but her phone went straight to voicemail. He paced the house, feeling a strange panic rise in his chest. It was nearly midnight when he heard a knock at the door. When he opened it, he was met by an unfamiliar face, a woman who appeared to be in her late 20s, her eyes filled with urgency. "I'm sorry to bother you," she said, her voice trembling. "But I need to speak with you about Olivia." The woman's words struck Matthew like a bolt of lightning. He stared at her in disbelief, trying to make sense of the situation. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice shaking. "My name is Rachel," she replied. I didn't know how to do this, but you deserve to know the truth. Olivia's been seeing someone else. She's been cheating on you." Matthew's world stopped. The room seemed to spin around him as the words sank in. He wanted to deny it, to tell her she was lying, but something deep inside him already knew it was true. The pieces of the puzzle that had been confusing him for months were suddenly falling into place. The late nights, the coldness, the distance, it was all a lie. Rachel continued, "I've tried to talk to her. I didn't want to hurt anyone, but she's been sneaking around behind your back for months. She said she was getting a divorce, but I didn't want to believe her." Matthew couldn't breathe. His chest tightened, and the world around him blurred. His thoughts raced as the betrayal sank in deeper. "Who is he?" Matthew asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel hesitated, glancing away. "I don't know his name." She was careful not to mention him, but Rachel paused, her face pained. "She said she was leaving you for him." Matthew felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath him. He couldn't fathom it. Olivia, the woman he had built a life with, the woman he had trusted, had been living a double life. He had no idea who this stranger was or how far Olivia's deceit went. Over the next few days, Matthew struggled to process what Rachel had told him. He confronted Olivia, but she denied everything at first, even laughed it off, claiming Rachel was a liar. But the more Matthew dug, the more the lies unraveled. He hired a private investigator, hoping to uncover the truth. The investigator's report shocked him. Olivia had been seeing someone close to their circle of friends. The betrayal cut deep, but what hurt the most was the fact that Olivia hadn't just lied to him, she had destroyed everything they had built. Matthew was heartbroken. But the more he thought about it, the more he realized that this wasn't just about Olivia's affair. This was about who she had become, someone who could lie so easily, someone who had hidden such a dark secret from the person who trusted her the most. Days turned into weeks, and Matthew's world fell apart. He moved out of their shared apartment, unable to stay in the place that had once felt like home. He struggled to get back on his feet, to understand how someone he had loved so deeply could hurt him in such a profound way. The pain was unbearable, but he had to keep going. He had to rebuild, to find his strength again, and then, just when he thought he couldn't take any more, a twist came that no one saw coming. One evening, after months of silence, Olivia reached out to him. She wanted to meet. Matthew was hesitant, but curiosity got the best of him. He agreed to meet her at a cafe, unsure of what to expect. When he arrived, Olivia was already sitting at a table. She looked different, older, like she had aged years in the short time since they had last spoken. Her eyes were red from crying, and her hands trembled as she reached for her coffee. "I never wanted to hurt you," she began, her voice shaky. "I was scared. Scared of what would happen if I told you the truth." Matthew stared at her, waiting for her to continue. The silence hung between them, thick and heavy. "I never meant for it to get this far," she said. "But I was falling in love with him. And I couldn't leave you, Matthew. I couldn't hurt you by telling you what I had done. I thought I could just keep going and hope it would all just go away." Matthew didn't know what to say. He wanted to scream, to lash out at her for everything she had done, but he also felt something else, something he hadn't expected. Pity. He pitied Olivia, for what she had become, for the woman who had thrown away everything they had for a lie. "I don't know if I can ever forgive you," Matthew said quietly. "But I hope you find the happiness you were looking for." As he walked away from Olivia that day, he knew that his life would never be the same. But the truth had come to light. The affair, the lies, the betrayal, it was all out in the open. And with that knowledge, Matthew could finally begin to heal, knowing that he deserved better than the shattered love story he had been living. As the days dragged on, Matthew felt like he was walking through a haze, lost and uncertain. The world seemed to be moving around him while he remained stuck in the shadow of betrayal. Every corner he turned, every face he saw, reminded him of Olivia, of their past life together. It was hard to shake the image of her laughing, the way she used to hold his hand in public, or how she'd softly whisper sweet words in his ear at night. Now, those memories felt like lies. Olivia's confession had left him reeling, but the more he thought about it, the more he realized that this wasn't just about the affair. No, it was deeper than that. It was about trust, the very foundation of their relationship, which had crumbled under the weight of her deceit. He thought about the future they had planned, the children they had dreamed of, the house they were supposed to grow old in. It was all a facade, a house built on sand, yet, there were moments when the anger didn't come. When the betrayal felt like an old wound he could no longer touch. Instead, the hollow emptiness settled in, a silent ache that wouldn't leave him. He spent long hours walking alone in the city, trying to clear his mind. Sometimes he would end up in places they had visited together, the park where they had their first kiss, the coffee shop where they'd spent hours talking about their future. Each location only intensified the void within him. One evening, after weeks of no contact, Olivia showed up at his apartment unannounced. She had been quiet since the cafe meeting, but now, her presence filled the doorway. Matthew froze, unsure how to react. She looked more fragile than he remembered, her face pale and her hair disheveled. Her eyes, though, were desperate. She wanted him to understand, wanted him to know that the affair hadn't been something she had planned. But it didn't matter how many excuses she had, how she tried to explain it away. The damage was done. "Matthew, please," Olivia said, her voice barely audible. "I've been a mess. I've realized how much I've hurt you. This, what I did, wasn't me. It wasn't us. But I was scared. I was lost." Matthew couldn't look at her anymore. He had seen this side of Olivia before, vulnerable, pleading for forgiveness, looking for him to rescue her from the mess she had created. But he wasn't that person anymore. He wasn't her savior. He was the one who had been left shattered, scared, he repeated bitterly, his voice cold. "You were scared of what, Olivia? You were scared of me? Of us?" She flinched at the harshness in his tone, but Matthew couldn't help it. The pain of everything they had been through, all the deceit, came crashing into him like a tidal wave. His chest tightened, and he turned away from her. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't even know if I can trust you anymore. You've taken something from me that I can't get back. Olivia's tears fell freely now, and for the first time in weeks, Matthew felt an overwhelming sense of pity. She was a stranger to him now, but even so, seeing her so broken was a painful reminder of how much he had once loved her. He had to turn away. I loved you, Olivia. And you threw it all away. You chose someone else. You chose lies over me. She didn't know what to say, couldn't seem to form the words. Her hands trembled as she reached out to him, but Matthew took a step back, unable to allow her to touch him again. He had to let her go. For his own sanity, he had to sever the connection between them completely. After that, things only became more complicated. Olivia kept trying to reach out, sending texts, leaving messages, even showing up at his office. She pleaded for another chance, saying that she'd made a mistake and that she wanted to fix it. But Matthew wasn't sure anymore if he even wanted to try. His trust had been shattered beyond repair. One evening, Matthew sat in the dim light of his living room, staring at the empty space around him. The silence was suffocating. He could hear the echo of his own thoughts as he replayed everything, the good and the bad. Every smile, every kiss, every argument. He asked himself whether he was being too harsh, whether he was pushing away the love of his life over a single mistake. But in the pit of his stomach, he knew it wasn't just one mistake. It was a string of lies, hidden for months, and worse still, the fear that Olivia had never truly been the person he thought she was. The pain was still there, like a weight on his chest, but somewhere deep inside, Matthew knew it was time for him to heal. It was time for him to move on. Weeks passed, and Matthew started to rebuild his life. He went back to the gym, started focusing on his work again, and even picked up a few new hobbies. It wasn't easy, and some days were harder than others. But slowly, the pain began to lessen, and the anger started to fade. The void that had been so overwhelming began to feel a little less suffocating. Then, out of nowhere, he ran into Rachel again, the woman who had initially brought the truth to light. She'd been a part of the story, and now, here she was, standing in front of him at the coffee shop where he had been going to clear his mind. Matthew, she said softly, her expression hesitant. I just wanted to check on you. I didn't mean to cause all this. Matthew didn't know what to say. Part of him felt angry at her for bringing the truth to the surface in such a chaotic way, but another part of him was thankful. Without Rachel, he might never have known the extent of Olivia's betrayal. It's been a lot, he replied, his voice low. But I'm getting there. She nodded, understanding the gravity of what had happened. I just wanted you to know I didn't mean to hurt you. I care about Olivia, but I never wanted to be the cause of your pain. Matthew looked at her for a long moment. He didn't know if he could ever forgive her, but there was a part of him that appreciated her honesty. The situation was messy, but sometimes, honesty was all he needed to begin the process of healing. Thank you, he said, his voice quiet. I don't know if we can ever be friends, but thank you for being honest with me. Rachel smiled weakly and nodded. I hope you find happiness, Matthew. You deserve it. And with that, she turned and walked away. Matthew watched her go, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of peace. The worst was over. He had been through the storm, and now, the skies were beginning to clear, but Olivia's shadow still lingered in his life, like a faint memory that wouldn't completely fade. Even though Matthew had begun to rebuild, he knew the journey to true healing was far from over. One evening, months after everything had fallen apart, Matthew received a letter. It was from Olivia. I've never stopped loving you, it began. And I will always carry the weight of the pain I caused. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I am trying to be a better person. I can never undo the hurt I caused, but I hope one day, you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Matthew read the letter through twice, the words echoing in his mind. He didn't know what the future held. But as he sat there, feeling the weight of her words, he realized that healing didn't mean erasing the past. It meant moving forward, with or without her. with a deep breath, Matthew put the letter down, closed his eyes, and began to dream of a future that was his own, one where the scars of the past would eventually fade, but the lessons learned would stay forever.